Greetings, and welcome to the Modern Alchemist channel. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and this is the Essentials of Practical Alchemy, the 2016 workshop, class number 7, Perspective and the Occult. Alright guys, we've wrapped it up. This is it. This is the last class for the 2016 year that will be talking about the essentials of practical alchemy. Of course, this doesn't mean that this is the last class that I'll be doing, but certainly with this topic area and with this structure, this will be the last one for this year until next year we gather together and start learning more about the essentials of practical alchemy, kind of get ourselves grounded in the basics, but not so basic that we just are treading water, dabble our toes into the intermediate and maybe some of the deep stuff, just like we did this year. I want to thank Maggie and Ray and Earth Magic for being so gracious and providing us a space, a classroom where we could conduct the class, and for opening up their store to the entire world as an emblem of their support for the esoteric and pagan community here in Olympia and worldwide. So my hats are off to you guys. You're wonderful, and thank you so much. I also want to thank my good friend Tony and wish you all the best on your newest adventures as you travel off to the other side of the country, and I wish you and your family all the very best. Hey Moses, hey buddy, I'm gonna miss walking with you around the lake. Yeah, so with that said, I would like to proceed with the class. This particular class was designed to just sort of help do a little bit of fine-tuning and adjustment on certain concepts that over the period of the last 8 weeks I had received emails which were essentially covering certain topic areas in general, and so I brought those topic areas to this class so that we could discuss and clarify some of the things that we had covered this last several weeks. With that said, let's begin. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and this is the Modern Alchemist channel, Essentials of Practical Alchemy, the 2016 workshop. Enjoy. Greetings, and welcome to the Modern Alchemist channel. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and this is Essentials of Practical Alchemy, the 2016 workshop. And this is our last class, you guys, for this year. I want to thank all of you guys who have been faithful in attending, and all of you guys online who've been attending. Today we're going to open up discussion a bit more to answer some of the questions which you guys have been funneling towards me over the last 8 weeks. And so I'm going to cover those because there was a lot of overlap in the questions. We'll address some of that. And we're going to talk about perspective and the occult. So with that said, I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend Tony, who's been actually helping out behind the scenes. So this is Tony. He's been doing this for the last 8 weeks with me. He's the voice of the internet for you guys, so he's keeping track of the chat feed, and he's going to let us know. So you've got someone there talking for you, and anyway,
hey everybody.
That's it. Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Tony's going to be going on a new adventure here shortly, so I'm excited for him. He's moving to Michigan. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to miss him. All right, with that said, let us begin. Oh, and I've got the questions right here that you guys have been sending me. So first off, let's talk about the perspective idea. I get received a lot of questions regarding why we're even doing this. Like, for instance, why am I here sharing this information? And so I'm going to start with that. The big reason, someone had sent me this video this last week, and it really got me heated, because what this video was a guru from some guru organization, and he's a little older than me perhaps, and he is basically explaining that all of the stuff that you can read about or see visually is either inaccurate or incomplete, which I completely agree with. The problem is that he knows this, he knows the correct stuff. He even mentions it in his interview where he's like, for instance, the heart chakra, the lotus there has 8 petals. That's what you see taught generally. Now that works. That is still a consistent, true principle, as we learned in the previous weeks. The number 8, like an 8-pointed star, is representative of two three-dimensional, six-sided objects laying on top of each other and being viewed from the top down. So the heart then is emblematic in that dialogue with the discussion on chakras of that energetic force, right, that's being released. And we've talked about that unified force of positive and negative, masculine and feminine, receptive and projective. And they're seated here in your heart chakra. He points out in this brief interview, it should have 12 lotus flower petals. You get that, right? Makes perfect sense. But you have to understand that the reason that this makes perfect sense is because then each flower petal represents a different period within the zodiac. So you have 12 unified periods around one solar object, and it shows you that there's a bigger picture. This opens things up. Why does this make me frustrated? Because we're past this now. We need to start teaching each other correctly, and if you persist in allowing people to learn it incorrectly, then you're at fault. I believe that you're kind of responsible for that level of ignorance in the world, you know? And all of the damage that's responsible, results from you allowing people to be misinformed. And that's why we're here. Now, as part of that, I keep getting asked, what books did I read to get me here? And it's kind of like asking me, what is the summation, if you could wrap it up, the last 25 years of what you've done, wrap that up in a couple books. There are no books other than the classics. Like, I would advise you to become familiar with classical mythology and recognize the people who articulated those mythologies were not ignorant, foolish people. They were trying to embed a deeper esoteric and astrological and astronomical feature of the universe into all of that. And again, you need only to have the right perspective. But right now, all of us are like Kilroy up here. We're looking over the wall. We know that there's a whole bunch of stuff down there, but we can't actually see it because there are no real guides. And the ones that are out there are like this guru who recognizes the truth, understands the actual principles, and then kind of keeps it for himself and his people who are paying him. And that, that's part of my problem with this. So that's my perspective, is that if people are blindly walking around and all you have to do is just to help them see, then things will become easier. Now, one of the things in answer to the books is if you can get your hands on, this is a college text, and this is Understanding the Religions of the World, and this is The Sacred Paths. A really good friend of mine gave this to me, and because I had lost a bunch of books in the move, and this is nice to have this restored. So something like this is very valuable because it's going to give you the nuts and bolts of what people are doing. It's not going to tell you, it won't give you the soul of the religion, but it's going to give you the mind of it. It'll give you kind of the pretext of what's going on. It's really important to understand that understanding religion is not a bad thing. That's one of the things that will help you, because these religions were designed not to enslave, but to enlighten, not to burden you, but to free you. And if you're starting to feel burdened or bound, then what you're doing probably isn't healthy for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's depressing you, you should probably find a better course. All right, as part of this, let's talk just a little shortly more about this perspective idea, the occult and symbolism. And this is an address to a couple other questions. If I draw a little guy, right, and this is a dude, and here's his legs. So typically, you kind of understand that this is a guy, right? This is a real fundamental basic symbol. If I want to draw a lady, and this again is just basic, like the stuff I grew up with, I know, right? Terrible stick figures. It's terrible. But you get that these are, you see them on bathrooms and stuff like that regularly, right? Here's something to think about as you see these. The guy is like this, and this by itself represents water, right? And over here, this by itself is fire. So from an alternative perspective, if Kilroy were to look like this at the man and the woman, he actually now sees them presented as symbolically correct because he's looking at them from the bottom up, right? This is kind of, I'm doing this to illustrate for you that a lot of times when you're studying symbolism or the occult or a lot of the things which seem confusing, you really have to kind of flip it on its head. You have to look at it from the other way. I call this the bizarre world construct or the hangman construct, where basically you are taking a principle and you're looking at it from its reverse. Now the reverse can be upside down or the reverse can be dualistically flipped, right? So it's lateral, so now I'm looking at it this way. The reason this is important, I'm going to leave Kilroy sitting there for a second, is when we're looking at Kabbalah and we've got these three pillars, right? Traditionally, we are told that on this side, on the objective, so Kilroy is looking at this, let's see. This would be the black pillar. This is neutral. This is the pillar of mildness. And this is white. And from a subjective standpoint, I'm walking into this. So the white is on the left and the black is on the right. But Kilroy, he's looking at it objectively, right? So this is his right eye, right? He's looking at it objectively and he's seeing that the white pillar is on the right and the black pillar is on the left. And words in Latin, for instance, that bring more of this to the surface would be the dexter and the sinister. Dexter is on the right, the sinister is on the left. And we already understand that the idea of something being sinister is something being dark or dangerous, right? But that's him looking objectively at the left pole over here, the left pillar, and saying that this is a bad thing. This is actually, this whole thing, this idea of three, is something that I've been trying to help you guys see or understand. Because this three component, whether we're looking at it like this, and we're saying, okay, over here is salt, and right here is mercury, and over here is sulfur. Sulfur. These three, if you follow that Star Trek lecture, we understand that salt represents the body, it's fixed. Sulfur represents the volatile, that's the soul, and Mercury represents the mind. So we have mind, heart, and body, or mind, soul, and body, or spirit, soul, and body. Mercury is got both, it has elements of its mother over here and father over here, so it is water from mom and air from dad. Okay? And this allows Mercury to move and communicate between both realms, which is why Mercury is tied to communication. The reason why I'm bringing that up, because then this becomes language. This here, thanks to Star Trek, we know science falls under salt, right? And then over here, under sulfur, this is art. And the way I always remember that to keep that significant is art comes from the heart. I don't think that's accidental. I think that this is an idea to remind you that the thing that is at your core, this is your art. This is an expression that exceeds reason, that goes beyond that typical bounds. In this class, we've spent a lot of time over the last 8 weeks talking about this science element here, right? Last class, I, of course, broke it down, looked at your physical eye electromagnetically as an expression of the sun, literally as an expression of how the sun operates within an electric universe. and we've looked at the body as being that receptive component, which is taking everything in. And functioning on a planetary thing. So as we consume more, we tend to get bigger. as suns consume more, they tend to constrict, it would seem. And they get bigger when they're seeking to consume something. So this is part of it. This is going to be one of the more significant things that you can gather. Now, as part of this, we've had several viewers ask me, specifically, in fact, Luke writes, Luke, you know who you are because you've been writing to me a lot lately. Luke asked specifically, is there a way to take, for instance, this or the zodiac with the 12 signs and try to figure out a way to work people, to type them, to figure out how to operate the system. This is what I tell all of my students and my dear friends who, when we're talking about the zodiac, how this applies. If a person is more ego-driven, in other words, that they haven't actualized themselves, that they're functioning more as a reaction to everything around them as opposed to an actor who's trying to creatively influence their environment, then things like the zodiac really work well, because the person is slaved to the cosmic consciousness, which expresses itself in fundamental terms of astrology, or within these kind of terms, but all of us exhibit each of these kind of qualities, right? We all move from one point of this triangle to another, and in the zodiac, as we move around, the initial thing, like your natal chart, that's sort of like you getting electrically stamped. This is giving you an idea that at this moment, when the universe is in this position, this is the expectation of the outcome in terms of personality. So like in India, they actually have people, it's the coolest thing, where they will have couples who will talk to astrologers and then try to coordinate with them so that their child might have certain advantages because they were born within the electrical construct of the universe as it's manifesting a particular kind of consciousness. So they actually will speak to them about when should we conceive and when should we plan on giving birth. That's significant. I see nothing wrong with that. That can only be helpful because they're trying to give, they're recognizing that you are not independent of the influences of the universe at large. Now from this 3, since we're talking about astrology, there is the Ordo Templar Orientis. This is a horrible, horrible depiction. And then around that there's, this is 7, I'm not even try. This will have 7 going around this way, and then around this, there'll be another 12, okay? This is in the center of the layman of the Ordo Templar Orientis. You'll see it on the back of the thought deck. Aleister Crowley devised this. This then turns into a cross, right? It goes off. I'll show it up here or something in post-production. But the point of this is, you guys are asking about tarot and stuff. The point is, we begin in the middle with that, the all, right? And then that all breaks down and manifests itself into those 3 components of salt, mercury, and sulfur. From there, it expands outward into the 7 planetary influences. So you get the 7 planets: Sun, Moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter. You get your planets in there. And then around that is another layer, which has 12 referential to the zodiac. And this gives you your 22 panels. This gives you that magic number 22. And 22 has extraordinary significance within the occult. Typically this number is associated, and there are other classes from last year where I talk about how time is calculated on the basis of water, or functions of water, or observations of water. So I suggest that you take a look at that. In the zodiac, this is roughly speaking on the 22nd of each month, you could expect to see a turn from one zodiac to another. There are a couple exceptions, literally just a couple, but for the more part, this gives you one of those accurate ideas. If you're looking at the zodiac in terms of this being the winter solstice, and up here would be the summer solstice, and then over here it would be the autumnal equinox, AE, and over here would be the vernal equinox. As you're looking at, did you have a question? Oh, okay. As you're looking at that, then on the 22nd, whether you're going all the way around, it rotates into the next season. So the 21st would be the solstice, and then the 22nd rolls you into the next season. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So this idea, again, is a visualization of that electric stamp, right? Of telling you these are all the things which kind of comprise who and what you are. All right, I'm just checking for other questions here. So, yeah. Okay, so I did answer that question. So in this context, then, this is the unification. These are the, what would be the correct thing? These represent the three layers of force manifestation within the material plane, right? You begin with this point, it then comes out into the prima materia, the three elements of salt, mercury, and sulfur, and then it expands out. When you get into planetary influences, you get a whole bunch more chemistry, because each planet has a different metal associated with it. That's significant to learn. And then as you move out into the zodiac, again, we have different elements associated with the presentation of that material expression. So if you begin to start studying this and looking at this from a baseline point of just this is how things manifest, you're going to be much farther along in your alchemical studies. Okay, and the whole point of all this is I'm just trying to point you in the right direction, give you the correct perspective so that when you're looking at something, nothing's going to be in the way of you understanding that. All right. So the next question that I've been asked to address is talk about the Philosopher's Stone. Okay, so we're not going to go Harry Potter here again. This Philosopher's Stone is although Nicholas Flamel is associated with a person who created the Philosopher's Stone as an actual alchemist, or Edward Kelly or Dr. John Dee. All of these guys actually are legendary alchemists. But when they're talking about the Philosopher's Stone, they're actually talking about an acronym. Vitriol, which is, so this is Latin. This is actually a slogan that's been around for a few hundred years now, and probably longer. But it says, Visita interiore terra rectificando in Venice occultum lapidarum. And what this means is, visit the interior of the earth, rectify what you have found there, and you will find the hidden stone. Really mysterious, right? That still doesn't mean anything, right? So the idea here is this. Because this is the core, this is your alchemist stone. This is the thing that people get confused with. They think that you need to actually go spelunking and visit the interior of the earth for real. That's not really what's being discussed, although I'd imagine that could be a lot of fun. But the truth is, what this is talking about is the interior of yourself. Since you are, the way to draw the connection, from dust you were created, and dust you shall return, and the dust is of the earth. So you seek within yourself, you being part of the earth. Everything you consume is part of this earth. You can't separate yourself from it, not even a little tiny bit, because you need the food, you need the air, you need the water, you need its protections. So you then become a physical embodiment and expression of the conscious state of the planet, right? But to a very small degree, but that's you. So as you seek out, the rectification of what you find there is a recognition that, one, you have to understand what it is you find, and then you have to understand it enough to recognize that there's something that needs to be done. This is the transmutation of yourself. This is the point at which you seek out that hardened heart, right? And you soften it up. You transmute it from a fearful state to a joyful state, from a state of ignorance to a state of knowledge. And it all comes as a result of all of the stuff that we've been discussing over the last 8 weeks. All of it, and more. There's so much more that we could discuss, and we just don't have enough time right now. So, I hope this answers your question about the Philosopher's Stone, and the idea or conception behind its origination. That I doubt very seriously that Nicholas Flamel and all these guys were spelunkers, but that they actually recognized their connection and sought to rectify themselves with everything around you. Typically, when things aren't going well, it's usually because you stand in opposition to the flow of events. So if you can learn to go with the flow, another alchemist saying, you go with the flow, then you'll find yourself augmented, benefiting from those successes. All right. How are we doing for time? Sweet, we're doing good. Next question. I've had this one a lot. We've talked a little bit about it in previous classes. The next question is, where should I go to find a good book on symbolism? And where should you start studying? So I brought a couple books that I have that I use. Sorry about that. This one here, you can get yourself one of these at like Barnes & Noble or Amazon or something. Again, this is a bare bones book on symbolism, and it discusses it from every possible standpoint. It's called the Element Encyclopedia of Secret Signs and Symbols. I've talked about this before, largely because it's really, really, really useful. Not because this is the complete end result, this is just the surface. But it gives you enough that if you're clever, you can start seeing the connections between one symbol and another, and recognize that many symbols are simply repetitions of the same thing. And as part of that, we talked about this. This symbol, the 8-sided star, which you see all over the place. We've talked about the hexagram, and the fact that this symbol can be represented in multiple ways. We've not gone too deep into the cross, only because the cross is simply another expression of a cube, which is laid out. It's opened up, so literally it pops open. So if you're looking at a cross, there's your cube again, right? So it's just this flipped out. So none of these symbols, I've had a few people worry, like they're like, are these symbols dangerous or archaic or something? None of them, it's just geometry, you guys. It's just geometry. This is stuff that, and you have to learn to separate yourself from an ethnocentric perspective, meaning a perspective generated from where you are standing right now. And that's actually going to move us to the next question, which is, oops. Cultural anthropology. This is the study of people and their culture. Part of alchemy involves this. In other words, where you have to be able to not only look at our culture currently, which is why I do the esoteric smackdowns, so that we can look at our culture, how it functions, and find actually threads of similarity that lead us to our ancestors. There's nothing about the planet now that would be remotely familiar to any of our ancestors 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. It's a fundamentally different place. And that's from the top down. That's from looking up into the sky and seeing a different set of organization, different planetary bodies up there. Nothing, really. It's visual. Nothing that we can see. Nothing that would explain why there was so much adulation over Saturn and Jupiter back in the day. None of that is the same, and so our assumptions, when we look, the current state of science and anthropology is that they assume that everything that is the way it is today environmentally is the same as it was 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And yet we know from the mythological record that can't possibly be the case, because there literally was this rapid fervor of writing and recording all of these events that were happening, and then we stopped. We literally stopped at the turn of the Common Era. With the composition of the New Testament, we stopped writing about doomsday. And the narrative of a doomsday was pushed forward now for us so that people are looking for things to blow up now. When the expectation is, when you follow the esoteric and the occult timeline, we're in cleanup mode right now. We're in organized after all the wrecking of things through the age of Aries and the age of Jupiter. Now we're in the age of Saturn, and in this age, it's about pulling it together and building something from all this mishmash. When you look at your ancestors, it will help you a lot if you recognize that they didn't waste time in the presentation of what they were doing. In other words, they didn't simply sculpt their gods because they wanted to just make another sculpture. Every sculpture that they use, every as we pointed out in one of the classes, the postures, positions of the hands, the feet, the legs, all of this is about communication. It's all communicating to you. It's a different kind of language. Any questions online yet? Nope? Okay. I know y'all are like, how many more questions are you going to ask? All right. So I've covered, let's see. So Vinny, I covered your question, I believe. Salvatore, I believe I got yours as well. And keep in mind, you guys, those of you who've been writing me, the questions I'm answering are the ones that keep piling up. Like if 10 or more people keep asking me the same kind of questions, then it's a clear indication that we need to probably address that. So keep up with the questions. Do you guys have any questions for any of the stuff that we've covered so far? All right. So, alchemy. We talked about science. All right. With regard, I'm basically just trying to wrap this up for you guys in the last 10 minutes here. With regard to alchemy as this language, science, and art business, you're going to have to give yourself some time. You are going to have to give yourself permission to learn this slowly over time. It's taken me several decades. And most of the people that you read, as Tony pointed out to me the other day, Dion Fortune, she said in her book, The Mystical Kabbalah, she points out, it took her about 10 years for this stuff to gel once she was actually presented with it in its complete form. And as part of that commentary, I want you to realize that you're going to witness me refining a lot of these ideas over time. So that if you look at my earlier work, you're going to see that I was looking at it from a particular standpoint. And as I develop in my understanding, so too does the archetype or symbol that I'm looking at. This is part of the beauty of it, but you also have to realize that you're going to experience exactly this. And you can never settle for just the one interpretation of what you're looking at, because that'll immediately limit you. And that's the big thing here. When we're talking about perspective, it is the single limitation that you must overcome. Like you've got to get over all of the negative press out there regarding all of the stuff that you hear. People write to me and they're like, but it's the black arts. And I'm like, precisely, it is the black arts. Coming from the land of Chem, you know, where it's the black land, you know, from the Nile, you know, filling up the area with silt. Like this, it's attributed to that, but it doesn't mean it's bad or dark or dangerous. What I believe is, you know, dark or dangerous is having the truth, seeing someone actually fumble around and use something that's not helpful, and never interceding or trying to help them out to say, look, if you just turn this way, oh, look, now it's clear. And that's really what we need to start doing for each other. Now, as part of all of this, the last question that I've been asked, and I've been asked this one a lot, usually is a component of thank you for all this work, and you are most welcome, everyone, seriously, you are most welcome. This is a work of love. Like, I love this material, and I recognize that by sharing it, it helps you. Now, as part of that, I've been asked, what can we do for you? What you can do is start sharing the videos and stuff that's being produced out there. Because I guarantee you, if you're interested in it and you find this stuff helpful, it's going to definitely help someone else, perhaps in a different way. The ultimate goal is that all of this stuff is visual. Language, art, and science, it's something that in our day and age, it must be seen in order for it to work. This is why you know, you have all these Illuminati conspiracy websites that are all like, why are they showing it? And some people have hypothesized that for whatever reason, they feel compelled to share the stuff that they're doing. I don't feel that there's any compulsion. The only reason this stuff is being shared is because it must be witnessed by witnesses in order for it to take place. So, as part of that, if you want to get on board and start changing the world, let's share this stuff and get it out there. And I will keep producing a lot more. In fact, my incentive is always higher when there's more people interested in seeing this stuff come out. So, that's it. This is Essentials of Practical Alchemy, the 2016 workshop. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I seriously appreciate all the support. You guys are the best, seriously. And I'm working on new course material where we'll be talking about perhaps the tarot in relation to Kabbalah. And again, the material on this channel is sort of intermediate level. It's not necessarily super beginner, but I have a lot of beginner stuff there. And for those of you who are more advanced, my counsel is to always keep with the basics. Always focus on the stuff that got you where you're going. It's like being a squirrel in the trees. You can get way out on the branches, but you got to remember the trees that way. You know, the bigger body is over there, and if you get lost, you need to go back to the tree to figure out where you are. So with that said, I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and thank you guys for participating.